What
is
poppin'?
my
Guys, and welcome back to another video. If you couldn't tell already, kinda like Spider-Man. But, I figured in honor of Sony releasing a trailer, let's do a Spider-Man focused episode. Let's do a recast of Spider-Man and some of his villains. This is also all in the context of if I got to write the story. I have a whole thing planned out. Like, I have 5 seasons of this thing planned out in my head, plus 3 extra movies about Miles Morales. So, I got shit planned. But today we're just going to be doing the castings because I don't think I have time for the entire fucking story. Now, in a perfect world, I would really be the one playing all the roles. I'd be Spider-Man, I'd be Black Cat. Dude, I'd be such a good Black Cat. But unfortunately, we're not in a perfect world. And for some reason, you have to be like athletic and strong to be Spider-Man. Both of which I am not. So we're probably gonna have to be downgrading a little bit from me. So we're just gonna be fan casting the second best people who would be in the role, I guess. But today we're gonna be focusing on Spider-Man and 7 of his villains. I'm not gonna tell you which ones they are. You're gonna have to figure that out. Or you're just gonna skip to like when I introduce them. So fuck you if you do that. This is also all in the context of if this were to be a season 1 of a Spider-Man series. So, without further ado, let us get into the first villain of today. For our first villain, we have Rhino. For those who don't know, Rhino is a classic Spider-Man villain that is... well, he's well known for being big. And no, he's never been on screen before. He's never been on screen before. If I'm being entirely honest, I don't really know that much about Rhino, but then again, I don't think there's really that much to him. All Rhino is, from my knowledge, is a big and strong Russian that usually provides the muscle for the team, and the only personality that he has is thick. So since he is so thick, he's probably going to be done with mostly CGI. However, who would voice him? We need someone with a very dominating and booming presence that also has a voice as thick as Rhino is. I decided to go with Russell Crowe. I mean, if you just listen to his voice just for a little bit, you will understand what I am talking about.
Who Russell Crowe knitting? I know what this refers to. For many, many years, people in the knitting fraternity have tried to enjoin me in their soft bosom.
And yeah, he's not Russian, but people who have been able to fake accents for a very long amount of time now, so I don't think that will be really much of a problem. Plus, Rhino's a big boy, and Russell Crowe is a pretty big boy. I mean, not as big as him, but he's still got some big boy to him. So, Russell Crowe as Rhino. Next up, we have Electro. You might recognize this villain from the critically acclaimed movie The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where he's a complex and interesting villain, and he had a really deep and emotional connection with Peter. Sorry, what was that? Oh. Yeah, never mind. He was pretty shit in that. Yeah, Electro kind of got done pretty dirty when he was portrayed as a blue Sour Patch Kid, so... I mean, it wasn't even really Jamie Foxx's or Mark Webb's fault. I mean, the whole movie was basically just a giant clusterfuck of executives saying, now, I know you want to make a good movie, but what if we didn't? So, in short, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, bad. We need new Electro. Electro, in my eyes, should be a beacon of rage, and his powers are almost like a representation of him releasing his anger in a very negative and harmful way. How Electro becomes mad at Spider-Man, I think, really depends on the story you're trying to tell. And in my opinion, really the best person that can play rage is Taron Egerton. Taron Egerton, whether it be in Rocketman or Kingsman, has always been able to show rage in a real and raw way that doesn't feel like overacting from Nicolas Cage. While Electro won't be a huge part of this series, I feel like Taron could really bring out a very deep and multi-dimensional version of Electro despite his small amount of screen time. So, Taron Egerton as Electro. Scorpion, to me, has always been a manipulative assassin that uses his poison as an accent to his torture. Scorpion hasn't really been put on the big screen yet. I mean, he's been implied, but we haven't really seen what Michael Mando can do yet. so I can't really say if he's been well or miscasted yet. But what we'll need from Scorpion is someone who can act menacing and intimidating, all while under a very large amount of armor that covers most of their face. And when I think of menacing with a mask, I think of Boba Fett, aka Tamura Morrison. I mean, Boba Fett is one of the most feared and menacing bounty hunters in the galaxy, and the entire Star Wars fandom loves him, which is exactly really what we need for Scorpion. So, Tamura Morrison as Scorpion. This next villain will shock you. Get it? Cause his name is Shocker. No. Now, I don't think Shocker's a very big villain in the Spider-Man universe, but from what I know, he is a thief that tends to work with other villains. And for this series, I want to go in a little bit more depth with his character. I would like to go more he doesn't want this type of life route, but he's just so deep into it that he can't stop. So I want a thief that can show that he can get the job done, but also show some sympathy for Spider-Man so that he might help him out in the future later. And for this, I think Pedro Pascal would be a great option. Pedro absolutely has the acting chops to pull this off. I mean, even in The Mandalorian, we've seen him go that thief with a good side type of route. But he's also had other roles in Kingsman and being one of the only good parts in Wonder Woman 1984.
Not the character arc, just more of the acting of the character.
And I think after that shitstorm of a movie, it would be good to see Pedro in an actually good superhero role. So Pedro Pascal as Shocker. Next up, we have probably one of the best Spider-Man villains portrayed on screen. Vulture. Michael Keaton absolutely killed it in Homecoming, and honestly, I think it would be hard to replace him with that role. So I think for this Vulture, we need to go in a bit of a different direction for him. In the movie, Adrian Toomes is portrayed as a working man that will do anything for his family, but I want to go a different route. I think this Vulture should emulate how a real Vulture is, an unsettling look mixed with a slimy personality. I don't want Vulture to have a heart. I want him to have a black hole that feeds off of everyone's pain. I think the best person to pull this off would be my favorite actor of all time, Andy Serkis. Andy has always been able to play a villain that can go big, and his presence always demands your attention. He is so good at having just that slimy and uncomfortable vibe to him in some of his roles. And while yes, he is best known for his CGI, his regular acting is just miles ahead of everyone else. Whether he be an ape or a wrinkly old man that's a little bit too into levitating Ray, Andy has an incredible acting ability that has shown he can play that nature we want from him. So, Andy Serkis as Vulture. Now, on to one of the bigger villains of the season, Mysterio. I feel like Vulture, Mysterio was done justice in Far From Home with his performance by Jake Gyllenhaal. But again, like Vulture, we want to stray away from that style of the movies and the personality that he had, and go into something a little bit more different and varied, and maybe a little bit closer to the comics. For Mysterio, I do want him to start off as a hero, but as the season goes on, I want him to become not that good of a hero. But how is he going to act when he is Mysterio? Well, I think we should lean into more of that dorkier side, more so than the movies did. I want to go full Christopher Reeve Superman for this one. I think it would be a different change of pace from the movies, and on top of that, we would get a more comic accurate adaptation in which Mysterio wasn't taken as seriously and he was much more dorkier. I also think it would be interesting if we had Quentin Beck be Peter's high school digital media arts teacher. That way we can have him mentor Peter by being his digital photography teacher while also being in charge of the film department, which he has a connection with film in the comics. So to sum up this Mysterio, I want him to be a dorkish dad. And I think the perfect person for this would be Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd is the embodiment of one of the most wholesome people on the planet, And on top of that, he has a very dad vibe within his acting and in his real life. Plus, he's also had experience with being in a big superhero movie, so he would be able to stand his ground in the series. So, Paul Rudd as Mysterio. Now, for the final villain, you may have not really heard of this person before. Jackal. For those who don't know, Jackal was Peter's biology teacher who turned crazy after Gwen Stacy, who he loved, was killed by the hands of Green Goblin. After that, he basically turned into a hairy green Smeagol that got obsessed with cloning and shit. But all you need to know for this context is that the Jackal is a mad scientist who had feelings for Gwen Stacy. There is also another adaptation of the Jackal in which he had a suit and mask instead of the little hairy green Smeagol boy, which is probably what we're going to end up going with, the mask and the suit. At least for now. So in this universe, Green Goblin doesn't actually exist yet. So the person that killed Gwen Stacy is going to be Vulture. And the whole point of Jackal being the main villain of this season is so that it challenges Spider-Man to make sure he doesn't end up killing Vulture in spite of revenge. So we need someone who can convey rage, a sickly vibe, and a smart but scary side to them. And I think the perfect person for this would be Gary Oldman. It's genuinely baffling to me how well Gary's able to transform into his character. Like, you don't even see Gary in the role, you just see the character. I mean, you honestly can't tell me that this...
General Reznov, yeah. I'm more famous for that than anything else.
And this...
I told you. Benny. Bring me everyone.
What do you mean, everyone?
Everyone!
are the same person. So, Gary Oldman as Jackal. Now, for the one and only, the spectacular, friendly neighborhood, ultimate, amazing Spider-Man. I feel like I don't really need to explain who Spider-Man is to you guys. Now, I want to go a little bit of a different route for Peter. I don't want to go in the route in which he's 16 years old, like most of the films are, or where he's 23 and an experienced Spider-Man, like in the Spider-Man PS4 games. I want to go in a different direction, where he's 4 years into being Spider-Man, and he's in his senior year of high school. That way, he is still somewhat experienced, more so than the previous films, but he's not as experienced as the Spider-Man PS4 games, so we have a little bit of a balance between the two, and we get to tell a little bit more interesting and varied stories with him. But the most important question is, who's going to be the new Spider-Man? Now, personally, I would actually like for an unknown actor to take the role in this. I think it would be really interesting to see this actor really become and develop into this Spider-Man. That way we just know him for Spider-Man and not anything else. But that does feel like a little bit of a cop-out since we are fan casting, and leaving out Spider-Man, the named character, would be kind of dumb. So the person that I ended up choosing to portray Peter Parker and Spider-Man is Jack Dylan Grazer. I feel like Jack has been able to show that he can go that more nerdier and dorkier type of character in it, even though it is a little bit more amped up than what we're looking for. But he can definitely tone it down if he needs to. However, he also showed that he has that sarcastic comedy and lightheartedness that we need for Spider-Man in Shazam, where he played Freddie Freeman. I think Jack could bring a really fun and emotional take on Spider-Man that we haven't really seen before from the other Spider-Man, that really allows him to stand out and differentiate himself from everyone else. So, Jack Dylan Grazer as Spider-Man. So, that's my cast for Spider-Man and his villains for a Spider-Man series for Season 1. So tell me what you thought. Do you agree? Do you think my opinion's absolute horseshit? Let me know. And if you did think my opinion was horseshit and it could be improved, who would you choose and why? Post it in the comments. And guys, I finally know what that red button does. It takes you to the YouTube homepage. So I'm glad we finally have that figured out and settled. We don't need to ask that anymore. But I do think that if it is grayed out, that means you're just stuck on my channel forever, and you can only watch my videos, so... Damn, I guess that sucks for you guys. Well, that's gonna do it for today's video. I will see you next time where I light myself on fire, so look out for that. Okay, bye! Welcome back to the credits, the part where I scrape the bottom of the barrel for content. Today's recommendation is a sci-fi exclusive, Resident Alien, starring Alan Tudyk. I felt kind of bad for Alan because he was originally going to be Jackal in this video, but then Gary Oldman came along and, well... So as a replacement, I'm recommending one of my favorite comedy shows, Resident Alien. Resident Alien is about an alien that crash lands on Earth with the sole mission to find the broken parts of his equipment to destroy Earth. But while there, he bonds with humans, planting doubt in his mission. It's a greatly constructed story that is both emotional and funny. So if you have sci-fi, watch Resident Alien.